I'm going to do the Tui Chub Variation first.
This one?
Yeah, that one. So all these flies I call variations because I'm constantly changing them every time I go fishing. I figure there's something I need to tweak or change and improve on, maybe from a fly I've bought somewhere. But this particular one here, Paul and I started going up to Pyramid Lake about probably 4 years ago, and it was a little tough the first few times we went up there. We didn't catch a whole bunch of fish. George went with us one time, kind of showed us how to do a few things, woolly buggers and beetles and stuff like that. But Paul ended up talking to a guy at the California Fly Shop named Sean that showed him this Tui Chub that he tied, and so that's basically kind of the fly, except he uses a little flashaboo for a long tail in it, and other than that it's pretty close to the same. So anyway, we were up there fishing this October for opening week, and there was a guy out there in the float tube that was just catching maybe 50% more fish than everybody else. There's always somebody that's got them figured out and seems to be catching most of the fish. And I kept hearing him say, yeah, that red butt fly is really working good. So I thought, well, maybe I'll take that Tui Chub and kind of figure out how to add a little bit of red to the back. And I thought about maybe some marabou, but it didn't really seem right for that fly. So I remembered I had this stuff I bought for tying like throats and striper flies and stuff. It's called Flash and Slinky. And it's like a artificial deer hair almost in the consistency, but it's got a little bit of sparkly strands in there too. They're real fine, and it just seemed to work really well for this. So anyway, I decided to tie a little bit of that into the back of the fly, and that night we sat in the camper and we tied a bunch of flies up, and everybody got one. And from all the reports the next day, everybody was catching fish on them. So I don't know if the red made a whole lot of difference or not, but
more confidence maybe.
Yeah. So we start out with a Gamakatsu B10S hook. It's called a stinger hook. It's used a lot in tandem flies for a trailer hook. They don't let you use it in Russia. Apparently you can't use stinger hooks there because they worry it tears the fish up too much. But found that's a good size hook, and it seems to work really well for this particular fly. So also I'm using a Danville monofilament line to tie this. It's all artificial materials, and I find it seems to work pretty good. I looked at some charts, and they say for flies of this size you should be using a heavier monofilament. This is extra fine, which is what he was recommending.
That's what you use. My dad uses it.
You can break it. You got to be a little careful, but it's pretty durable. So anyway, I start the thread about a third of the way back from the eye, and then the first step is to tie in some of this red material. So usually fold it over a little bit maybe, and get about somewhere about 1.5 times the length of the shank, typical tail length. So tie that in first. I'll tie it back to the hook bend. And I found that this fly seems to work better if it's sparse too, so I don't put a whole lot of material on it. And when it gets wet, it really is translucent. I like the way it looks, kind of natural looking. So after the tail's on, the next step is to tie in the body. And for the body, we use another Enrico Puglisi product. It's called an EP brush. And this particular one is a anadromous 2.5-inch wide. He also sells brushes in 3-inch. Most of them are 3-inch, bigger saltwater flies and stuff. But the Tui Chubs actually in the lake do get pretty big, but there's also a bunch of schools of smaller chub mixed in. And I think the trout, I don't know, I seem to find a smaller fly tend to work better than using a real large one. So anyway, here's what that looks like, and you get, I don't know, probably 5 of them in a pack. started using this one already.
Yeah. Kind of explain what that is, for
Yeah.
guys who don't know what it is.
So what it is they make a brush, kind of, it's like using a dubbing loop, except they use fine wire. And you can make your own. You can buy a jig and use ultra wire and spin your own brushes if you want. I haven't tried it yet myself. It looks like it could be kind of tedious work, but these things are, you know, fairly expensive. I don't know, it's $9 for a package. So you probably could save a little money after
How
you
many
figure out
flies
how
do
to
you
do
get
it.
out of a package?
Well, I can usually get 3 or 4 out of a full length out of that long, and I think you get 5 of these in a package.
15 flies.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can blend your own colors and stuff, so there'd be an advantage to doing it if you wanted to make your own. So, what you want to do is just take the end of it where the wire is and just tie it in on the hook, so the whole thing's backwards, facing backwards for now. And really, you can determine how full the fly is by how tight you make the wraps with the brush. But like I said, I tend to like them a little sparser than heavier. So I'll tie that in and I'll bring my thread or monofilament back up towards the front. And so what you want to do is kind of tease the brush apart like that. And you're going to wrap it around the hook. So once you got it teased apart like that, you want to fold it back. And try to keep it somewhat folded as you spin it around here. And so like I said, depending upon how tight you make these turns determines how full the material is. So I'm going to try and do maybe close to a 1/16 of an inch maybe between the wraps. If you touch wire to wire, you can really make these things probably too much material on it, gets too fat. There's no weight on the fly, so you need the fly line to get it down or fish it up near the surface. Mitch, what type of line were you using?
Actually, I was just using an intermediate.
Like a slow sink? Because
Yeah,
I was
okay.
using like a 6-inch a minute sink rate.
Yeah, most
Pretty
of my fish
fast.
are less than 10 feet of water, so.
Yeah, I imagine you could add weight to it if you wanted to, but I tend to fish these just like a woolly bugger, just cast it out and strip it back.
Well, it's better action without the weight.
Yeah. Now at the beginning of the season when the bait fish are you know, all over the place, this is a really good fly to use, but I also used it like last March and did pretty well on it then too. So I'm going to wrap this up to about that third point that I started back behind the eye, and that's where I'm going to stop this because I'm going to tie in some more material after the brush is in. Get that teased apart there and get a few good wraps on it. Okay, and then Gene, for you, I use the very back of my scissors, so I'm not using a cutting blade on the wire.
Good man.
I don't have any. I need to buy some diagonal cutters or something. But so after you cut that, you're gonna have a little tag in here. Bend it down and just tie that off. Okay. Now. I brushed these fibers back a little bit, and so this is something else that I saw him use at the show. It's it's just called an EP component, but it's a nice little brush, and it seems to work pretty good. I think it works a little better than using Velcro on a.
Like a dog brush.
Yeah, it works. It's kind of the needles are spread apart a little bit more, and so it's not as rough on the material. Kind of teases it out real nice. You just want to kind of straighten those fibers up a little bit. Okay. So the next material is, it's called Fin Raccoon. And this particular color we're using is olive. It's pretty nice. It's longer than rabbit. It's got these nice coarse hairs in it. These guard hairs that kind of keep it the shape full. So what I do is I'll straighten it out, and then I take my bodkin and I take about maybe about 1/8 of an inch worth, spread it apart there.
Where'd you find that? Because I only find it at Orvis.
I think I got this at J. Stockard.
Oh, did you?
Stockard does carry.
Does he carry it?
Yeah.
Paul was
Yeah, Orvis,
buying
yeah.
it. Yeah, at Orvis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bigger bag.
Yeah, you
Stop.
got some big long zonkers of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's from Australia or it's something. There's something a little
Might be
different about it.
Finland, who knows?
It's Finland.
Finland.
It is Finland,
That's the name.
but
Okay.
it's dyed.
They don't have green raccoons there?
I got some orange, red, and purple of that stuff, so. I could just see a purple raccoon walking by.
So, just like when you're taking deer hair, I try to pull a little bit of the loose hair out of the back there. There isn't much to it. It's actually pretty full. And so, what I'll do is I'll kind of measure this out. So, see how the guard hairs extend back, but when I measure it, I measure from the underfur. So I want the underfur to end up right towards the end of that tail there that I'll put on. Right there. Pinch wrap and get it in place. A few wraps to lock it down. Cut that off. At this point I'll spin it around the other way, so I'm working on the underside now, and I'll take some of this other material here, also from Enrico, and it's Sparkle Magic. It's pretty much just like ice dub, except the hawks are a lot longer. I'll take a pretty good pinch of this stuff.
Angel hair, like call that stuff too.
Yeah, it's
Same kind of thing.
pretty similar to that. I'll just kind of fold this up to get to a length about like that. And so I want this to go and kind of right towards the back of the hook. I'll tie that in the belly there. Couple wraps, and then I'll fold the other end back over. And a wrap or two over it. I'll just leave that for now like that. And spin it back around to the top again and take one more 1/8 chunk of this raccoon. Try not to lose those guard hairs. This one I'll shorten up just a little bit from the first one, so it's tapered nice.
No, so you're putting that one in front of the other one.
Yeah, just building it towards the front. Of this on the bottom, a little bit less this time. This stuff gets all over everything. It's like tying with hair. You better tie somewhere where you're not gonna get in trouble if you make a big mess. Last one, I'm gonna trim a little bit off. You gotta be careful with these gamakatsu hooks too. These things are really sharp. And then I got just enough room to put just a little bit more of this on the top. Okay, and at this point, the original fly had a couple of pieces of black flashaboo that he ran on the top of the fly. But actually it was a black mirage and I can't find it. I think it's discontinued, they don't make it anymore, so it's a mirage is a little thicker than this flashaboo, but since this is all I could get now, I don't have to be. Finish the head off here a little bit. Okay, so at this point I'll take it out. Like I said, you be careful with these hooks because they're super sharp. And I'll take this brush again and I'll start teasing it back out.
Tease that in front of the vise. Put at the vise at the jaws. There you go.
I left mine at home.
I have more copies here if anybody needs them.
Oh, we have that loop, do you split that or you just leave it loop?
Yeah, well usually it'll break when you tease it out like this. If not, you kind of run a scissor through it too. Just don't stretch it, because if you stretch it, it'll,
Pull it out.
yeah, it gets deformed and it starts shooting off at weird angles and stuff. So. Yeah, usually just tease it out. Now usually I try not to cut it. I'd rather break it off with my fingers so it's
Well,
not
uneven.
even. Yeah, it looks a lot better if you just cut it. Okay. So the last step is to apply these adhesive eyes to it. I've tried a lot of different ways of doing this so far, but I was using epoxy last night, and that was kind of a struggle because it was setting up on me a little quick, so I gotta get some, like you said, George, some 30-minute epoxy or something like that. But these eyes are adhesive holographic eyes. This particular size here is 5/32. Silver, they come in pearl.
Then you put the 30-minute on there and just let it go, you know?
I'll just take the eye on the end of the bodkin here, and then I'll figure out where I want it to go. I want to put it back from the eye a little bit, so when I put epoxy or something over it, I don't foul the eye of the hook up.
It's always fun out in the water to discover you got epoxy on the eye.
Yeah,
Even
well,
your little
No,
You
you
know,
can't
your,
get
your
To
spin
try to
your
pick the,
nippers won't
yeah.
pick epoxy out.
thermal tool to get.
Yeah, right
you
there.
end up sticking it in your finger. Yeah.
You always discover it out on the ladder.
So you want to look down from all sides to make sure the eyes are as even as you can get them. Just make sure, you know, the fly needs to be balanced in the water. It can make a difference on how the fly swims in the water for sure. So, and then, like I said, if you're going to epoxy it, you got to double check before you start putting the epoxy on. Or if you want to try some of that UV cure, you can stick it on there just to hold them in place.
Yeah, and then epoxy later.
Yeah, and that just, it's really hard to get the epoxy on without fouling all the material, unfortunately. But anyway, so yeah, and when it gets wet, it tapers down a lot more, so it's more like a minnow type shape.
There's some water right there.
So